Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, and our ongoing study in Gregory Palamas and the Holy Hesychia. We're going to take a look at pages 37 to 52, and we'll continue in our introduction, but we'll take a look at the first and the second question being answered here. So let's go to block 1. And we look at the wisdom of God, which is mystical. Mystical wisdom. The wisdom of God is mystical. Supernatural peace is given by Christ alone and through the tradition of the fathers, by the activity of the Spirit. Therefore, the true philosopher will ascend to the creative cause. Christ became incarnate for our wisdom so that we could acquire divine wisdom. Incarnate wisdom. The psyche must receive grace from above itself. To acquire truth means to glorify the Creator. When our life is liberated from finite care, we are filled with admiration toward God, and this brings deeper understanding. Then the psyche is led forward and above toward wisdom. So question 1 is, how does the wisdom of God imprint the soul? How does the wisdom of God imprint the soul? And the answer to 1 is in block 2. The answer to question 1 is eternal wisdom. Mystical wisdom plus incarnate wisdom brings about eternal wisdom. Christ came to call the psyche to its primordial beauty. Christ gives true and eternal wisdom. Through Christ, who is the divine archetype, divine truth leads to the blessed life because it contributes to salvation. It becomes present to the heart of the perfect. The wisdom of God imprints the heart of the perfect, reaching the promised beatitude. Theosis, as union with God, comes through the praxis of sacred action. It's a wisdom purified by God, who is the most luminous one. And it means we negate the wisdom of words. Therefore, block 2, note 3, wisdom is from the luminous one. We must be vigilant in chant, prayer, and supplication. These practices lift the new mind to the divine majesty through participation and communion with the inexpressible doxa glory of God, allowing the experience of inward illumination. So how does the wisdom of God imprint the soul? The answer is block 2, note 3. It is through participation and communion with the inexpressible doxa glory of God. Then we reach inward illumination in this contemplative state, in this deiform habit of mind. That brings us to the second question in block 3. And it involves the mind-body question. And if you notice here, Hesychia, as being taught by Palamas, should look very familiar to you, because what is it? It is mystical theology. And we just finished a study of mystical theology in Maximus. We just studied mystical theology, and what were the 5 categories? Being, motion, difference, mixture, and position. And what are we looking at here for question 1? Being. And now question 2 will address motion. So this is mystical theology shaped around the concept of Hesychia, inner stillness. It is Gregory Palamas, it's his version of mystical theology. Let's take a look at block 3 on the second question and answer, and it becomes the mind-body question. In other words, motion of the body. Second question, how does one become convinced of the truth within the motion of the body in relation to the nous mind? Is the mind confined within the body? The answer, The body is the temple of God. The body is not evil. As David said, my heart and my flesh rejoice in the living God. Sinful desire is evil, but not the body itself. The law of the flesh struggles against the law of the mind. Law of flesh versus law of mind. We must expel the law of sin and affirm the supervision of mind to attain self-control and to improve the rational soul in its turn toward God. It's all about metanoia, the turn of repentance toward God. The nous mind is incorporeal, but metaphorically it is called the heart, and grace must endow the heart. Then it can rule over our thoughts. The heart is the seat of reason. Conviction of truth comes when grace endows the heart. The Spirit of the Son cries out in our hearts, Abba, Father. The upright heart seeks divine knowledge. The nous mind consists of its essence and its activity. The first function is external observation, then interpretation of observation, then contemplative positing, then return moment of self-awareness, which ends up becoming a circular movement. So you can see that this is Palamas. It's his version of mystical theology. 3.6 Conviction of truth comes through circular or dialectical movement. In this way, the mind transcends itself, reaching unity with God, ascending through contemplation in the realm of positing difference. Then the step of recollection, where we return and inwardly and bind truth together in unity and imprint the soul more deeply with Jesus Christ. And you can see from this lesson that the second lesson, the second part of the introduction, starts to bring things into focus. Now we see what Gregory Palamas is doing here. He's teaching us his version of mystical theology, but it builds on, as he said, it builds on the tradition of the fathers. So it builds on what the Eastern Orthodox already knew of Maximus, who taught mystical theology. And we just finished the study of the mystical theology of Maximus, which is great groundwork for understanding Palamas. Because question 1 is all about the being of the soul. How does the wisdom of God imprint the soul? Answer, block 2. It is wisdom from the luminous one. We must be vigilant in, remember he's a monk, we must be vigilant in chant, prayer, and supplication. These practices lift the mind to divine majesty as we participate and commune with the inexpressible doxa glory of God. Then we experience inward illumination of the divine truth. Second question, block 3, all about the motion of the body. There you go, that second category of mystical theology. And the question is, how are they related? How is the mind and the body related? And the answer is underlined in 5 and 6. Conviction of truth comes when grace endows the heart. The Spirit of the Son cries out in our hearts, Abba, Father. The upright heart seeks divine knowledge. The mind consists of its essence and its activity. It does firstly function as observation, then interpretation, then contemplative positing, and then return moment of self-awareness. It is circular dialectical movement. In this way, the mind transcends itself in unity with God, theosis. It ascends through contemplation in the realm of positing difference, and then the return moment. This is exactly mystical theology. We began in block 1 with wisdom of God is mystical. So Hesychia, the doctrine of inner stillness that knows God is Gregory Palamas teaching us his mystical theology built on the tradition of the fathers. That's block 1, note 1c. He says, and through the tradition of the fathers, meaning Maximus. So it's good that we studied Maximus, because this is perfectly aligned with the mystical theology of Maximus. These questions, the first two, have aligned perfectly with what we learned in the mystical theology of Maximus. So that helps us a great deal here. But block 1 gave us question 1, how does the wisdom of God imprint the soul? Block 2 gave us the answer to question 1, that it's contemplative communion with the doxa glory of God. And then block 3 gave us the mind-body question on relation, how does mind and body related? And the answer was dialectical movement. They are related dialectically, from going out of the soul and out of the mind into the external world in ministry, and then returning inwardly for deeper self-understanding as we imprint the soul more deeply with our understanding of Christ. So we get precise teaching here, and it's a continuation of the introduction, but it really does focus on what we're going to be doing from here on out. We're going to be looking at a question-answer format, but it's going to be a question-answer format within the structure of mystical theology, and it's going to be a mystical theology already taught by the tradition of the fathers. So it's going to be within that 5 categories we learned from Maximus of being, motion, difference, mixture, and position. Questions thus far correspond to being and motion. Question 1 spoke to being of the soul. Question 2 spoke to motion of the body, and how the mind, how the heart seeks divine wisdom through the body and within the body, and in relation to the body, in relation to the external world. And we learned that the answer is dialectical mystical theology. Palamas called it circular movement, but today we call that dialectical movement. So Palamas is teaching us dialectical mystical theology of Hesychia. There you go. Dialectical mystical theology of Hesychia. In this lesson we learned the dialectical mystical theology of Hesychia, the doctrine of inner stillness. So that gets us an additional great teaching, pages 37 to 52, and it gives us the format. It's going to be a question and answer format. We've looked at question 1 on the being of the soul. We looked at question 2 on the motion of the body. And we will pick up in our next lesson. This is lesson 2. Lesson 3 will address, beginning at page 53. And I assume we will finish up question 2 and proceed on to question 3. So that wraps up this conclusion to the introduction. We'll pick up next time on page 53.